Assalamu alaikum. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, I bear witness that there is but one God. I thank Him for all of His prophets and messengers that He sent into the world. I will be eternally grateful for His intervention in our affairs in the person of Master W. Farad Muhammad, and for raising up the most honorable Elijah Muhammad as our exalted Christ and Messiah. And if I live to be 1,000 years old, I will never be able to thank Allah enough for His servant to the world. But in my own personal experience, one of the greatest teachers that I could ever and have ever been given in the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. And I want to greet everyone watching and tuning in with the greeting words of peace that are said in Arabic. Assalamu alaikum. I wanted to first of all say how honored and privileged I am to once again be in front of this camera to share something from my own experience, my own growth and development in the study of music and artistry. And the question given to me and to us, as all of us as students, why did the Honorable Elijah Muhammad want his ministers to know something of music, medicine, and colors? And myself being a violinist of, oh my gosh, almost over 30 years, since I was very little, and also a musician, a composer, a lover of music, one who studies music and musical compositions. When I came into the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and I, as a student of Dr. Mr. Louis Farrakhan, and I learned that this art form that I've studied as an artist, as a musician, was one of the sciences that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad wanted his ministers or his representatives to have some knowledge or understanding of. I was immediately intrigued by that, and I wanted to know more why and how my personal study of the violin can help in the fulfillment of his mission, which is the upliftment of the entire human family. And so, Sister Deborah, I want to thank her for giving me this opportunity to share something. And I thought this week I would start off with a discussion and playing. The piece that I opened up this video is a piece by a composer named Jules Massenet, who wrote an opera named Thais. And the piece that I played is a very important and significant piece from that opera called The Meditation from Thais. And I'm going to talk about that piece a little bit and its meaning. And then in the context of how a composer puts together a composition and how we can think about putting together or articulating our teachings in a way that can be most effective. First, I'll talk about musical structure, and I'll talk about the piece, and then I hope at the end, if the video is not too long, to be able to play the entire meditation from Thais in its entirety. It's about 5 minutes long. First, I'm going to talk a little bit about musical structure. I chose meditation from Thais because it follows a basic musical structure or musical form. Basically, it's what's called A, as in the letter A, B, A. And so the understanding is in this piece and in many classical music pieces and many songs that you might listen to, contemporary songs, they follow a basic pattern that can be kind of classified as an A section, a B or a middle section, and then the following an A section. And so the part that I performed at the beginning of this video was the basic theme of this piece, Meditation from Thais. And it sounded like this. And so the composer Massenet takes that theme and he introduces it, and as the violin sings through that opening melody, that theme, the theme comes back once again, a second time with this a little variation, and then we move into what's called the middle section or the B section. The B section follows the same feel of the piece, but it's a little different melody. That melody sounds like this. and that melody carries on through the B section of the piece. And then, as I mentioned, the form of this particular composition is A, B, A. So then after that middle section, then we have the return of the main theme of the piece, which is the A section. So after... And then, of course, as the composer layers on the ideas of his composition, he may sometimes give an introduction before coming into the A section. He might give what's called a coda, which is an ending. Coda means tail. He might put an ending on the end of his A section to end the piece. There are also other things that the composer will add on to highlight or elaborate or develop his theme, such as you will hear when I perform the piece at the end of this video. There's an orchestral background, and so the piece is beautiful just as a violin solo, but how more beautiful is it when the orchestra is backing up the violin solo, and the orchestra is full of many instruments, many colors. There are strings, the violin section, the viola section, the cello section, the string bass section. There's the woodwind section. There's a brass section, and then there's the percussion section, which you'll hear in the recording at the end of this video. The composer uses a wide range of notes, and so the Meditation from Thais is a very beautiful piece because it goes from very high notes, like as in, to very low notes on the violin. Also, other elements that the composer will use might be dynamics. Dynamics refer to the volume of the orchestra in the solo, and you'll hear in the recording how the violin will be very soft dynamic, which is referred to as piano, as in the piano, and a very loud dynamic, which is referred to as forte, which means loud or strong. Forte means strong. All of these elements going into taking that theme and building upon the theme to put together a musical idea, a musical statement. And then the effectiveness of the composer's ability to combine all these elements determines just how well the musical statement that the composer wants to make will touch the hearts of those in the audience. In this piece in particular, Meditation from Thais is one of the most famous pieces for violin because the composer Jules Massenet put in a tremendous amount of effort into making his musical statement something that would be not only pleasing, but would last for hundreds of years. And so in our approach as students in being able to articulate the Supreme Wisdom lessons and the lessons and the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and that which the Honorable Mr. Louis Farrakhan has articulated to us that we now have to re-articulate, our first step is to begin with the theme of what we want to approach or address or share or enlighten with those that we are speaking with. And then how we take that theme and develop that theme, and the sub themes that will come under our overall theme is how we dress our message or what we are trying to articulate, how we dress that. And there are many ways to do this. Of course, I, as a violinist and as a musician, when I'm talking about music, I can talk about music and artistry from many different perspectives. I can look at it from a spiritual perspective, and so I might reference references from the Bible or the Holy Quran or other spiritual teachers who have enlightened me on music. I can speak from a scientific perspective, and I can discuss how sound is made and created and how sound travels. And as you know, in our lessons, we know how fast sound travels through the atmosphere. I can look at music from its social perspective. I might include all of this in a talk that I might give on music or or artistry to take my theme or my subject and then dress it or elaborate or enhance it with the supporting materials to make the people, the ones in the audience, to connect with them. Now, about the piece Meditation from Thais, I mentioned that was composed by a composer named Jules Massenet. And Massenet, a classical composer, wrote an opera. And if you know anything about opera, an opera is like a theatrical production, but all the elements in the production are centered around music. In fact, every spoken line in the opera is sung. There are no spoken lines. Everything is sung. And that's what makes it an opera. There are no spoken lines. There are costumes, there are sets, there's props, there's a libretto, which is like the storyline of whatever the composer is telling the story of. And so he follows that story. And the musicians in the orchestra pit will play music that is designed to bring to musical life the themes of that opera, of that story. And then the singers, because opera is sung, will act out the storyline. And most operas have been written in a foreign language, but you can find some operas in English. But in truth, if the composer is efficient at his ability to write the opera, you can really tell what's going on, even though you may not speak French or Italian or German, or if the opera is in a foreign language. You still can see and hear and follow along from the energy and the spirit of the actresses and the singers and the music in terms of what is going on. So in this particular opera, titled Thais by the composer Massenet, Thais, the basic storyline is centered around a religious man or a holy man, maybe a monk or some priest. And the priest, he travels and he ministers, attempting to save the souls of those whom he ministers to. And in a particular encounter, he meets a very beautiful woman named Thais. And Thais, in her beauty, she's also a woman who may have been enticed or wrapped up in the ways of the world. And so as the holy man begins to preach to her and preach to all those whom he preaches to, Thais is touched by his message. And not only does she pledge to give her life to righteousness and holiness, to leave off the ways that are opposite of that, but she pledges to be the bride of this holy man. And this is a very joyous moment, because anyone that is in search, it's one thing to save souls, but it's another thing to find the love of your life in saving those souls. So this is a reward that is of tremendous blessing and promise, and it's a very joyous moment in the story and in the opera. And so at this part of the opera, the holy man, he is to return. He goes away and he's to return to retrieve his bride. But upon returning to retrieve his bride and the love of his life, he finds out that she's passed away. And this is the most intense moment of the opera. This moment of tremendous despair and loss and trial for the main character, because to search for something, to serve God, to walk in the way of God, and find what you've been looking for, and then to have it taken away, it's a tremendous trial, as it would be on anyone. And so at this particular point in the opera, which is the most intense part, the climax of the entire experience, the composer Jules Massenet said in his mind, in writing this, he said, rather than have another song, another singing, and another voice to express this climactic point, he said that he wanted to have the violin to play a solo. and a soul that would be the meditation or the prayer or the thoughts or the feeling or the expression or the sorrow of that main character in losing the love of his life. And that is the setting of this piece, the meditation from Thais. And what makes it challenging for a violinist is how to articulate exactly that. The meditation from Thais may not be the most technically difficult piece in violin literature. There are things that require a lot more technicality, double stops and octaves and very fast moving notes across the strings. But what it does require is a heart that is able to articulate this kind of experience. And as a violinist, I've always strived to articulate through my instrument what I feel, whether it's a personal experience or whether I have to dig into the experience of others who may have experienced this. And this is what makes this piece important to me. I performed this piece maybe hundreds of times. I performed it at weddings. I performed it at funerals. I performed it at the funeral for my own mother who passed away many years ago. And so the piece means something to me. So as I play each note, I'm articulating with my violin what I may not be able to say with my mouth or desire to say or have the words to say. But through this instrument, I'm blessed to be able to feel and then share my feeling, and hopefully those who listen will feel what I feel and then feel what Jules Massenet, the composer, wrote into the piece, and then walk away or feel uplifted or inspired or healed by these notes. One more aspect I want to introduce before I play the piece in relation to my teacher, the Honorable Mr. Louis Farrakhan, who has coached me on this piece and other pieces. And in terms of our growth and development in the teachings that he has so faithfully articulated to us and to the world for over 40 years. And there's a story that he shared, and I'm going to try to do my best to share this story with our audience in terms of understanding that growth and development before I play the piece to end this video. And as you know, Mr. Louis Farrakhan was and is an accomplished violin virtuoso. There was a time under the guidance of his teacher, the Most Honorable Muhammad, that the Honorable Muhammad asked him and other artists in the Nation of Islam at that time to leave music and to focus on the articulation of the word, which is what my teacher did, a tremendous sacrifice that he made to be able to focus on growing in his understanding of the word, in his articulation of the word, and to be able to become the effective spokesperson for his teacher, the Most Honorable Muhammad, and a tremendous sacrifice that he made to show his commitment to his teacher. But at a certain point, God guided him back to his violin, and which he never really left the instrument. An instrument like the violin and being able to articulate yourself through music or through art, you don't really leave that. It never leaves you. But one day, as my teacher has told this story to me and to us, he was invited to the home of his teacher, the Most Honorable Muhammad, and he brought his violin, and he played for his teacher like I played for my teacher. And the piece that he played was the meditation from Thais. And the Most Honorable Muhammad was very touched by his performance and the way that he was able to articulate and express himself through his violin. Well, on another occasion, he was asked to return once again to the home of his teacher and asked to bring his violin with him, which he did. And he played once again. Mr. Louis Farrakhan played once again for his teacher, the Most Honorable Muhammad. And he played again this beautiful piece, the meditation from Thais. And at the end of his performance for his teacher, the Most Honorable Muhammad asked, "Isn't that the same piece you played the last time?" And The minister responded, yes. And he asked him, haven't you learned anything new? And as the Honorable Ms. Farrakhan shared that story with me and with us, and how not only was he asking him, have you learned any new musical or violin compositions? Because there are many violin compositions for us to learn, to study. I could spend the rest of my life trying to master and perfect all the violin literature and write my own original violin literature. But the Honorable Louis Farrakhan has exhorted us as students to look into what we've been given in the Supreme Wisdom lessons and in our teachings and find that which is new, that which is yet to be uncovered. So haven't we asking us learned anything new? Are we still articulating the teachings the way we did 80 years ago or 50 years ago or 10 years ago? Is our thought, is my thought, my understanding, is it the same as it was a year ago or 10 years ago? It shouldn't be. If I'm in constant growth and study and development, then how I see the teachings should be an evolved and ever-growing understanding and articulation of those teachings. If I stay stagnant with no growth and no development, then what have we gained? And this piece, Thais, which was premiered in 1894, so that's over 100 years ago, and thousands of countless of violinists have played it. And as I shared earlier, I played it 100 times, but do I play it the same way I played it 20 years ago or 10 years ago? I'm constantly studying and developing on this piece and researching and learning more. I learned something new today about the piece, Thais, meditation from Thais. And as I grow, my ability to articulate the piece should be growing and evolving and becoming more and more new. And so that's my goal as a student of the violin and music and musical expression, but also as a student of the teaching of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, to be able to articulate and understand his teaching. Not in a way that it was understood 80 years ago. We are in 2017, almost 2018. The world is completely different than it was in 1930. The universe is in a completely different orbit than it was 80 years ago. And our people need an up-to-date, right down to the modern times, as the lessons say, articulation of this teaching that will reach them in a way that they will embrace it and take it into their hearts and be renewed and enlivened by what we have. So I've talked enough, and I want to play now the meditation from Thais. I will use an accompaniment track with the orchestral background that will hopefully give the entire spectrum of the feel of what Massenet composed. And then I will invite you all to email me with your questions. I asked last week for you to send me via email something about yourself, what your area of artistic expertise is, whether it's music or dance or theater or visual art or culinary arts or martial arts. I did get 2 responses from a brother in Côte d'Ivoire, Brother Frank, who emailed me this week. Bonjour, comment ça va? Brother Frank, thank you for your email. And Sister Pamela, who messaged me. But I want all of you to send me a message so I know who you are. And I know what area of artistic endeavor you are pursuing, so I can help to know you, to share something that you may gain from our time together. And I hope at the end of this that we all will be closer and better and more perfected in our assignment, which is to uplift the entire world. So here's meditation from Thais, from the opera Thais by the composer Jules Massenet. Thank you. May Allah continue to bless you and all of us. Assalamu alaikum.